Ondo State Command of Amotekun has arrested 80 suspected criminals in the last 3 weeks. Now, out of the suspects arrested, 36 of them were paraded before journalists in Akure. Among them are 4 persons who allegedly invaded the farm of a People's Democratic Party chieftain and destroyed cassava plantation. Briefing reporters in Akure, the state commandant of Amotekun Corps, Adetunji Adeleye, said 32 suspects have been taken to court for prosecution.
Total of about 80 criminals were arrested within these 3 weeks. But what you have here is about 36 men and women engaged in various criminal activities, ranging from murder to anti-grazing, stealing of motorcycles, stealing of grinding machine, stealing of keke napep, stealing of various household equipment, including generators, and armed robbery. Majority of these ones we are parading today will be, having concluded the investigations on some of them, will be going to the courts.
And in Benue, the state governor, Gov Ortom, is alleging that the killing of herdsmen who are indigenes of Nasarawa State was done during a military operations. The governor spoke at the Nasarawa State Government House in Lafia, when he paid a condolence visit to Governor Abdullahi Sule on the death of his son and killing of 37 herdsmen. Governor Ortom called on all and sundry to refrain from making statements capable of heightening tension and escalating the situation.
It is also unfortunate about what happened here some few days ago, where some people were killed by the military. It is an unfortunate thing. You know that we started discussing this matter before the demise of your son. That alone was a pain. I could imagine as governor having more than 40 people killed in Nasarawa State. Takes a lot of pains, and I, on my part, have also tried to inquire from the military what really led to that massacre. I'm yet to get a feedback, and I want to employ people to restrain themselves from making utterances that will aggravate the problem and create confusion and apportion blame to people.
As Nigerians continue to struggle in getting the new Naira notes from banks, some individuals are having a field day with the currency at their disposal. That is the story of some syndicates who were arrested by the Department of State Services for their involvement in the sale of the redesigned Naira notes. A statement signed by the Public Relations Officer of the DSS, Peter Afunaya, the service established that some commercial bank officials are aiding the economic crime. The service also urged appropriate regulatory authorities to step up monitoring and supervisory activities to expeditiously address the emerging threats. The service has ordered its commands and formations to further ensure that all persons and groups engaged in the illegal sale of the notes are identified. And for more on the new Naira notes sale, let's talk to a senior economist, SPM professional, Paul Alleging, who joins us live in our Lagos studio, virtually. Good to have you join us.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me. Good afternoon.
So I want to start from, before we talk about the fact that some people are now selling this Naira note, which is ridiculous, but let's talk about the latest. We know now that the CBN governor made an announcement yesterday, has extended the deadline for the currency swap, which is now by 10 days, which is to end by February the 10th. And then I think there is another 5 to 7 days grace. But the House of Reps is saying, look, you must appear to answer questions because the deadline is not enough. Why is this particular process of currency swap and redesign so problematic compared to what we've seen before in the country?
Okay, so we have even done personal investigation, maybe research is the right language to use, to know why this is taking longer than before. I think more than ever before, the corporation the central bank is receiving from the deposit money bank is a bit not as expected. Whether that is deliberate, who is to blame, is not a blame game. It is for us to do the needful. 2 weeks ago, we were in different cities, which include the city of Ibadan and Kano. And I can tell you, over 90% of transactions in the city that we are directly involved with were done with the old Naira note, namely 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes. They were done with the old notes. We went to many ATMs, many banks. What they were dispensing was still old notes. That was 2 weeks ago. Last week, in the city of Port Harcourt and part of Abuja, we still saw a high level of transaction from POS operators to commercial banks. What we still had around in some places were old Naira notes. As of today, we've also made communication to people that live in rural community from Cross Rivers to Sokoto, to different places. I can tell you that what we still have in many places remains the old Naira notes. So central bank has not had a very viable system. And this is not the first time the system seems to be failing the Apex Bank. There was a time when central banks stopped BGCs from buying directly from central bank and giving to the public, that it was going to rely on commercial bank. Eventually, central bank saw that commercial bank is not really giving the kind of support the bank needs at that time. At this time, we're also seeing that as people are taking their old note to the bank, if you go to the next counter, you are still being given the old note, or you go to the ATM machine, sometimes it mixes old and new together, and it's a lot of worry. So when you say we have a deadline, which is good for us to perhaps change the currency to new notes, or to say we want to curtail those who might want to buy votes, which is one of the reasons, or we even want to monitor money supply. And according to central bank, over 70% of the old note is now within the banking sector. The question is, why do we still have so much of those money exchanging hands and within our system? Therefore, I think that central bank will need to work on a more viable system to ensure that the old notes find their way back to the covers of central bank, why the new note should start to swing.
I wanted to speak on earlier, which is the fact that, look, you're asking people to come swap the old currency, but when they use the ATM, they're going to withdraw the old currency. Are they supposed to go back into the bank to swap that particular one? But let's talk about this deadline. It almost seems that like the central bank is been very careful and cautious to not extend into the election cycle. Yes. Because if you notice, it's February 10th. And then you have a 5 or 7 days grace window that you can also continue to swap, which is going to give you about 5 days thereabout before the election. Do you think that there is also a political dimension to this particular policy?
Well, I must tell you that whether central bank says it publicly or not, I think from observation, central bank is doing everything possible, and is working with other sister agencies, by the way, to ensure that this old note is not in circulation. We have seen on social media pictures and videos of people that stash money in their homes, and this becomes a tool to manipulate people for election. And that's what we have seen. But it also does not mean that when central bank is called by the House of Representatives, it should not yield to the call. I think the Apex Bank should also yield, because it's a nation. And nobody is an island. If the Apex Bank calls, I think it's important for central bank to respond to the call of the legislature, because legislature is a viable arm of government. We have the executive, legislature, and judiciary. And so if central bank claims to be independent, but it does not mean it cannot answer to the representative of the people, because there may be information that these lawmakers have heard from their constituency, and they want to pass across to central bank to provide answers to. So for me, the central bank is careful, is trying best possible to ensure that this old note being legal tender does not extend to the day of presidential election or any election at all. And I can tell you from the body language and comments coming from President Buhari, it seems to be backing them with full force in making this policy a reality.
We're getting reports that even the commercial bank that the CBN seems to be relying on to circulate these notes, we're having reports that some of their bank officials and bank staff are now into new currency notes, if we may call it racketeering, where they are now selling these notes to the highest bidder. How concerned are you, and what could be the implication of this?
Well, I'm very concerned, and I am happy that security agencies are already doing their best possible. But how well can security agency do when you understand how spread our nation is and the coverage of banking sector? Some have 600 branches, some 400 branches all over. So how well can security agency do? I think what we should understand is that when there is shortage, definitely people will cut corners. And the central bank wants to suddenly manipulate, and not in negative terms. What central bank is trying to do is to adjust money supply deliberately because of inflation. Recall that the core mandate of central bank is to control price to have price stability, to ensure price stability and exchange rate stability. To that extent, central bank feels that when money goes back to the banking, to the bank vote, which is the vote of commercial banks, and people don't have access to the cash. So if you take, say, 5 million naira to commercial bank of old naira notes, I can tell you that they will not give you your 5 million naira for new naira note. They will ask you to put in your account, or they would ask you to open an account. If you don't have BPN, they will give you one. So that's what they are trying to do, so that they can monitor monies that are outside the banking sector and those that are within the banking sector. And the reason is simple. Central Bank at the time had said that we are increasing NPR. NPR was increased to 11.5, 12, 13, 14, even now up to 17.5%, even though there are a lot of implications for all these increases that many seems not to know. And the impact starts from the head of President Buhari, because now President Buhari, at the end of administration, will be paying over 5 million naira interest on ways and means alone because of the recent increase to 17.5% of NPR, let alone what business community we have to grapple with regarding those, the interest that the Monetary Policy Committee continue to jack up interest rate because they want to fight inflation. Perhaps that is the reason why Central Bank have said, if you mop up money that is outside the banking sector, and we ask banks to return to us, but we give them limited cash, that can help us to manage what the inflation pressure will be on the economy. I think that is one of the reasons. But that does not mean that what Central Bank is doing is perfect in the circumstance or is the best in the circumstances. The decision they are taking. But from our understanding, this is clear effort to manage or to manipulate money supply so that they can force down inflation back to perhaps 15 or 14% that we have been sometimes.
We will see how effective that effort you said is an effort, and we'll see how effective it will be. Thank you so much for talking to us, Senior Economist, SPM professional Paul Alleging.